Hello, heretics. This is Lilith. I'm here with Renee, and we are Veritas Voices. Welcome to our show this week. As a bit of a break from just taking on topics on their own, we've decided to focus a little bit on the headlines, as so many interesting things are happening in religion. Very interesting, don't you find them, Renee?
Yeah, I would say interesting is, in some cases, putting it nicely. I would say,
Oh, in all cases, it's putting it disturbingly nicely.
yeah, what we're about to cover will, for one thing, be crazy, and for the other thing, very bigoted. But yeah, interesting is, I guess, a way to put it if you want to make an understatement.
A wild understatement. In any event, this first article was one you found for us, and I wanted to start with it because it's a little more lighthearted-ish. By this, you may understand what we consider lighthearted in this topic. Although I think a lot of people have heard of this. Christian activist wants to sue NFL for Super Bowl halftime show. Now, this particular nut job is known as Coach Dave Daubenmire. Have you ever heard of him, Renee?
I have not heard of him prior to this thing happening right here. To be fair, I'm not familiar with American sports or with many coaches, but I think he's pretty popular in the world and also in Germany right now. I've also over the weekend talked with my friends about the Super Bowl, and we also talked about this particular issue. So it seems like the guy's making headlines.
Yeah. Coach Dave, I don't know if he is a real coach. That's the thing. He's not an NFL coach. He calls himself Coach Dave. It is possible that he coaches some minor sports or something. I don't actually know. I should have looked that up. Bad me. But it doesn't really matter. He calls himself Coach Dave, and he has a show in which he sits in front of, a green screen of a stadium, because he wants to associate himself with, that type of man. And he has tantrums about everything, just everything. It's endless. This particular one, of course, he was complaining about the show, the halftime show with Shakira and Jennifer Lopez being sexy, period. That's it. Just, women being sexy. Oh my gosh, I totally didn't expect that from a halftime show featuring Shakira and J-Lo.
Yeah, that was coming out of left field completely. Like, who would have guessed?
I know. Really, I expected them both to show up in burqas. That would be so much more typical of their general behavior. Ugh. I mean, they're both Latina, although Shakira is somewhat more mixed heritage, including, I believe, some Lebanese, which affected this one tongue thing she did, which appeared very sexy, but it was also a vocalization that's traditional to that region. And a lot of people were really, really excited to see this aspect of their culture and the vocalizations of it incorporated into this show. And they're like, oh my gosh, I know what that is. So it was exciting and fun. But they twerked and belly danced because, of course, they did. That is what J-Lo and Shakira do and have been famous for since the 90s. Apparently, Coach Dave didn't get the memo. So he has decided he wants to sue.
Yeah. And he wants to sue for, I think, $80 $876 trillion, because his reasoning for this is that his soul gets put into hellfire, or gets put into danger of hellfire. So essentially, he wants to sue the NFL, I think, because they will send his soul to hell, because when he sees these sexy women dancing, then he will get a boner, and God doesn't like that.
Yes, God hates boners, everyone, remember. No boners. God hates boners. Hates them. Hates them, hates them, hates them. I mean, I admit on some level, no doubt he was being facetious, if for no other reason than I don't know what court would take a case of, yes, of course, you're in danger of hellfire. But there is censorship in, granted, far looser these days, thanks to pioneers such as George Carlin, but there is censorship in terms of the FCC and what can be shown on American television. So, again, there was no nudity. There was sexy dancing, because obviously. And what really seemed to freak Coach Dave out was crotch shots. You know, cameras with big glitzy shows, often they swoop high, they swoop low. Yeah, and there were shots of crotches, which he apparently got very much in a tizzy about.
Yeah.
I've seen more skin at the beach, but
Like, I can only speak from experience, but in Germany, when you go bathing or when you go to the beach, then yeah, it's not unusual to see people with their dicks out, so to speak.
fully nudist.
Yeah, like we don't have, like for instance in Munich, when you go through the English Garden, then there's a lake next to yeah, the ground, and when you lay in the grass or when you walk past these people, then you can not every person, but every 100 meters you see a guy who's laying there naked. So it's not uncommon in Germany. And fun fact, actually, one thing which we Germans do within saunas, like when you go into a sauna, then it's almost, people will look at you funny if you don't go in there naked. It's almost like a cultural norm that you go in there naked. So
Yeah, well, I mean, part of the importance of a sauna from a health standpoint is just breathing, and your skin is sweating, and just like the health of and the moisture and the heat and direct access to your skin. So
that was
yeah,
just a
you're
fun
kind
fact.
of ruining the point if you go in, especially with a bathing suit on.
Yeah,
Like some
but
light cotton panties wouldn't, but yeah.
that was just a fun fact on my part. Like that, this obsession in America with nudity and with crotch shots and whatever he's getting up in arms about is not very common in Germany, and yeah, it's considered more crazy over here than it would probably be in America.
Admittedly, but remember, America was started by Puritans. You know, these are the people who thought you were indecent if you weren't wearing enough layers of underwear, as if anyone could see them. So, yeah, I, I, uh, I don't know. It's it's pretty typical for them to get really freaked out by any kind of sex or sexuality. But of course, he's focusing on, won't someone please think of the children? Talking about, oh, some hypothetical 12-year-old boy watching that whose hormones are just starting, which I don't know. I'm not a boy. Does that seem late for you? That seems late.
Well, that's a good question. I think maybe 10, maybe 11, 12. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it depends what.
I think it was starting with me at 12, but I think I was also maybe a little bit later than other people. So, yeah.
Okay, well, the noticing girls and having funny feelings that you don't know what they are. But yeah,
I mean, it's a question of what you mean. Like, did I have crushes at age 9 or 10? Yeah. Did I masturbate at age 10? No, not yet.
I guess, well, of course, he is afraid of that because, you know, if people touch themselves, it makes the baby Jesus cry.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, 12-year-old boys never have access to that sort of pictures or that sort of scenery. So that must really freak him out that he's exposed to that kind of stuff that he will never, ever see on the internet or any place else.
Of course not. Never, never, never. Well, the problem is, of course, that JLo and Shakira are attractive. Now, I spent a good deal of time growing up in a town that had beaches, and well, we do not have people would not go nude on the beaches. There were still unfortunate occasions with Speedos. And the men who wore them, of course, were always older. And I gotta say, you know, it might, if you've never really thought about the details, nude beaches might sound really sexy. But looking at the people who actually go to the beach, the general percentage of sexy is going to be way down there. You know, I'm not saying there aren't some sexy people, but there's a lot of people that are also not so much.
So what you're pretty much saying is that the kind of people that you do see at nude beaches are not the kind of people that you want to see at nude beaches.
Pretty much.
Yeah. I gotcha.
Or just at beaches in general. We were always creeped out when we saw some 60-year-old guy with a big stomach and wearing a Speedo, which, I mean, he wasn't nude, but it wasn't that far off. And it was just,
But the point here is that JLo and Shakira are obviously attractive, and that adds to the poor 12-year-old boy who is exposed to this kind of stuff and who might get a boner.
You know, I will say this for Coach Dave. This particular rant is not about homosexuality. He's also one of those who's very like, the gays, the gay agenda. Oh my gosh. You know, apocalypse now. Apocalypse now.
But wouldn't this sort of scenery or JLo and Shakira dancing and being pretty nude, wouldn't that add to the straight agenda? I mean, you can't have it both ways.
Well, and that's the thing. I sort of wonder. It isn't true that all people who oppose homosexuality are gay, but the ones who can't stop talking about it is usually a case of, well, the lady doth protest too much, methinks. So it makes me wonder, maybe he's not having the reaction he thinks he should, and that makes him mad. I don't know.
So you mean that that he does the outcry from the general populace?
Or he isn't getting a boner looking at ladies.
Okay, yeah.
I'm just saying. Of course, his podcast is called Pass the Salt. There's a lot of metaphors in Christianity with salt and saltiness, and he is indeed very salty. And apparently he considers it discriminatory towards Christians because no Christians are straight. And dancing is pornography because reasons.
Yeah.
Inscrutable reasons.
Like, that is something that I, as a law student, don't get at all. Like, he thinks that Shakira and JLo dancing within the halftime show and showing a little bit of skin is somehow going against his freedom of religion and is borderline discriminatory against his faith. I mean, that, as far as I'm concerned, is just untenable.
Well, that's because he's crazy.
Yeah.
Not to put too fine a point on it. And I mean, they even sang with their daughter. That was so cute. But yeah, it's obviously nobody is going to actually try and sue the NFL for this. They'd get laughed out on their ass. Nobody has time for this bullshit. But the fact that it freaks them out so much to see straight sexy things is telling, because apparently they can't have a gay agenda or a straight agenda. No one should have any sexual feelings ever, except when they're in the bedroom with their appropriately designated single spouse that is straight and church approved.
Yeah.
Like,
What they basically want to do is control the sexuality of people, and if they show that on television, you can show that because that goes against Christian, and you can have fun, but you can only have fun when we allow it, and you can't have fun your way. You can only do that which we allow.
controlling sex is a way to control people. It always has been. And to control the way people think about sex has always been a very powerful point. In 1984, one of the characters talks about the way that the party uses sex. Because it's not merely that the sex instinct creates a world of its own outside the party's control, which of course had to be destroyed. What's more important is that sexual deprivation induces hysteria, which is desirable because it can be transformed into war fever and leader worship.
Yeah.
When you make love, you're using up energy, and afterwards you feel happy and you don't give a damn about anything, and they can't bear for you to feel like that. They want you to be bursting with energy all the time. All this marching up and down and cheering and waving flags is just sex gone sour. And I can attest that that is what evangelical Christianity wants you to be: constantly on edge, constantly anxious, fearful, angry. Just, it's awful. It's an awful, awful way to live.
One final thing which I want to add to that is he also said that they should have forewarned him, and he didn't tune in to see J-Lo's crotch and that sort of stuff. But guess what they would have done if they had said, yeah, there's gonna be forewarning to every evangelical Christian who does want to see that, and thereafter I'm sure there will be Shakira and J-Lo dancing, and they will show you their crotch. What would they have said then? Well, it's discriminatory against Christians because you are doing a halftime show that's not Christian appropriate, that is not apropos to our faith, and that is pandering to other people. And like, either way,
because it's impossible for him to stretch his legs, go to the bathroom, get another round of snacks. No.
Yeah. Like, either way you would have put it, they would have somehow felt discriminatory, because if you don't pander to their beliefs, and if they cannot impose their system and their ways on you, then it's obviously discriminatory against them. But that's obviously not a right to not be discriminated against. It's a privilege to impose what you want to have imposed.
Oh, why was I ever a Christian?
Because you were taught to be.
Yeah. Our next article is unfortunately much more disturbing, and I have to thank Celtic Tiger for sending this to me, because there's no good way to address this. The original article is from deadstate.org, and they reference Right Wing Watch, which is a group that keeps an eye on Christian religious extremists. In this case, a Christian named Mike Heath hates gay people so much that he's launched a national tour. He claims he is inspired by Donald Trump making things personal and attacking his enemies. And he did appear on Dave Daubenmire's show, the Coach Dave Pass the Salt. He credited Trump's habit of insulting people and just the whole attacking, making things personal. He's decided to call the tour Faggots Are Maggots. And I apologize for using that word. I wanted to use it once because you should recognize this phrase. You should hear it you need to hear this. There have been many times where groups have sought to dehumanize others. And this is such a time. And I think we all know where that leads.
Yeah.
You more than anyone.
Yeah. Within Germany's history, I know what dehumanization can lead to, and I know what it can lead to if you denounce your enemies, if you put your enemies down, and if you even see people as enemies in general, political enemies, religious enemies, whatever. And
yeah. No, it is.
I think people are not often aware how dangerous individuals like Mike Heath are, but beliefs inform actions inform choices, and even if it's just this one person, it's a person with power, and if he gets his message out, then maybe, like, there probably won't be a Holocaust against gay people, but there will be individuals who will hurt other gay individuals, and that's awful.
It's extremely disturbing because seeing people as less than human is something that is done in order to prepare for doing inhuman things to them and to prepare other people for that. Now, Heath may be a fringe nut job, but he made, granted a failed bid, thankfully, to run for governor in Maine. He calls his work Helping Hands Ministries. And he's a regular on Coach Dave's show. And Coach Dave, crazy, neurotic motherfucker that he is, a lot of people do see him. Granted, some of them watch him ironically, and I'm thankful for that, but still, his Helping Hands Ministries, the only thing it's there to help people do is to know the love of Jesus. Which, if it's like Mike Heath's love, it seems a lot like hate to me.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
One thing they often say is love's offensive, and to a degree love is offensive, but love can also be needlessly offensive and offense, and love that is grounded on hatred towards other people, like hate the sinner, love the sinner, and that sort of stuff can lead to unloving actions and to atrocious actions, like gay conversion therapy, like shock therapy, where you try to shock gay individuals to get rid of their homosexuality and that sort of stuff.
We forget how horrible the abuse against homosexuals and that it's still going on, and not just in some backwater Islamic country where everyone is horribly treated, but in North America, in civilized countries, so-called, there is often horrible abuse perpetrated against, and granted, it happens in pockets where their oppressors have power, but that's total insanity. Now, I will say I went to Michael Heath's actual website, which I will not be providing in the descriptions below because fuck that asshole. He sort of titled this wasn't kidding, his latest post. And he started with a promise that he'd do the world tour because apparently it's a fact, his claim that gay people are maggots. But now, of course, he probably won't do the tour, not because he doesn't want to, but because, in his words, Tony Perkins, Tim Wildman, Frank Graham, Jim Dobson, and Pope Francis won't help him. Because, of course, he needs money and resources. Apparently, he felt the nudge of the Holy Spirit to publish that column, and he was hoping that he would get someone with heavier pockets to back him up.
someone who would prayerfully donate to him, as they call it in Ancestors in Genesis.
Exactly. And I mean, he peppers his entire article here. I'm not going to go over it in detail with, lots of references to revelation, damnation, making every decision between heaven and hell. And that's what they do to get people to vote for the desired political party. It's hell and damnation if you don't.
Yeah. Sort of this carrots and sticks approach, like, yeah, these people need help, and if we don't launch this tour, then there will be people who won't be saved, there will be less souls saved, and essentially inaction will cause you to have blood on your hands, and therefore you pressure people to donate.
If you vote for this person who has more liberal values, you are literally voting for the seed of Satan. You are taking arms against God. I mean, that's what they want you to believe. Sometimes, usually it's just implicit. It is explicit with this man. And it's interesting. At one line he says, "I hate the sin of sodomy, so does God, I'm in good company." And I think, isn't it funny how God hates whatever you hate?
Yeah.
God's really convenient that way.
He always is. And that's also something that is often the case with believers. God is oftentimes always agreeing with them, but also agreeing with the person that they disagree with. But one thing which I found really alarming with the article when I read it is the F word. We all know what we're talking about. Are indeed maggots. Maggots consume the rancid flesh of rotting dead things. Therefore, are no different.
And this is exactly the type of dialogue that we've seen in cases of dehumanization, not only in Germany in the 40s, but in Rwanda, for example, with the Hutus and the Tutsis. People were referred to as cockroaches. When people are referred to as rats and cockroaches, how are you likely to treat them?
Yeah, and this shook me especially because, like this line, because yeah, I know how it can be used, and I know that these comparisons are often drawn and like with your enemies, and I know what it can lead to, and I know that if people take this seriously, and if people get this inside their heads, then they see themselves justified to do with maggots what you do with maggots. Step on them, eliminate them, whatever.
Absolutely. And I will say to the credit of Germany that when Germany realized what it had done, because all these things happen by increments, you don't just walk in and obliterate people one day. Everything is a process. You were educated about it. There was a sense of, we did this wrong. We're not going to pretend we didn't. We're going to look at it and make sure this never, never happens again. And America has not done that with their own wrongs, with the Japanese internment camps, with slavery to a degree, but even with, for 100 years in the South, Black people were lynched on a daily basis just to keep them in their place, or on a weekly basis, probably not every single day, but all over the place.
Well, presumably every single day, just in different areas, like
Probably.
the South is big, but
the South is big. And that's the thing. That's the kind of dehumanization it leads to. And I know the song Strange Fruit by Billie Holiday, but I'm a Canadian. I've told Americans about it. I've told Black Americans who didn't know that song and what it represented. And that should not be the case. That should be something that America keeps in front of its eyes and says, we did this. This is absolutely evil. We will look at what it is and make sure we don't do it again.
Like, that's also the thing that I've said on Holocaust Remembrance Day. If we don't remember history, we're doomed to repeat it. And if you don't learn history, how can you remember it, and how can you make sure that you don't repeat it?
Well, people want to pretend that their nations are perfect, and no nation is perfect. But if you want a better future, you have to remember the good and bad of your past.
Yeah. If you think your nation to be perfect, and if you ignore all the flaws, then you're willfully blind. And if you're blind to actions, then you don't know what you're stepping on.
What you're stepping on is people. What you're always stepping on is people.
Yeah.
Now, I did get one more article. Do you think we have time?
Yeah, I think we have time for that.
Yeah, actually, it's been very, very helpful. I should thank Celtic Tiger for sending these articles to me. There's several, we couldn't cover them all, but really disturbing occasions. And this one was about a young man in the South who's gay. He's gone to a church for years. He left when he came out because he didn't think that he would be accepted by people, but his mom wanted him to go to church. When he visited her, to please come to church. And he said, okay, I will go for you. And he's still in this place where he feels like there's something wrong with him, but he's living more authentically. And he had a boyfriend, and he said, okay, we'll go to church together and just go in the service, not cause any trouble, just,
Attend.
my mom wants attend. Exactly. My mom wants me to come see these people that I grew up with. And he was afraid they wouldn't accept him. But it was worse than he had any idea. They were surrounded. His boyfriend was thrown out of the building forcibly, and he was surrounded, trying to first pray away the gay and speaking in tongues and various other forms of basically what amounts to attempts at exorcism. And then they started physically assaulting him. It's just, and this is in Oklahoma City. I mean, it's the South, but it's still a large city. And he couldn't believe it. Because it wasn't just condemning. It wasn't just words. His family had gone to this church for years, presumably. And they assaulted him, like physically beat him, and threw out his boyfriend so that his boyfriend could not help and protect him and help get him out of there.
Yeah, that is.
He was pinned to the floor. He was punched in the face. I mean, this is what this leads to.
Yeah, this is sort of as a continuation of what Mike Heath preaches. This is what this can result in if people buy into the message. If you're gay, then you're a maggot, and we have to beat the gay out of you so that you can become human again, basically.
Exactly. And this young man...
that's not what Mike Heath said, but this is a thought process that can be advanced by thinking that gay people are inhuman or that they are less than you, and that being gay diminishes your humanity.
Mm-hmm. And there's, and the response of the church leaders has been appalling. And there's been a public statement complaining about a rush to judgment, and that there is apparently more to it. I'm not sure, just hand waving, not really with any details or any, and of course they're fully cooperating with authorities. That's their claim. But this young man still thinks he's a sinner for having a homosexual relationship. He just is so lonely and so tired of hating himself that he decided to have a homosexual relationship anyway, even though he feels like he's sinning by doing it. And I know that feeling, that endless, unbearable self-condemnation where you're just like, I can't do it anymore. I don't care if it's a sin. It can't be as bad as living in this horrible state of self-hatred.
Yeah.
And it's this is why the entire evangelical movement exists. This type of abuse is not exclusive to the LGBTQ community, but it is especially horrific against them and more common, I would say, overall. But there are
And
all
probably
kinds.
also more known, I would
Yeah,
presume.
fair. Well, and I think they feel, for example, when children are abused by church leaders, it's, at least we're discovering, it's very often covered up. But at least they feel the need to cover that up. This type of stuff, they don't even feel the need to cover up most of the time. And yeah, anyway, this church is the First Assembly of God in Blackwell, Oklahoma. And I agree with the young men that this church should be shut down. I don't like to interfere, but it's not about your personal religious freedoms. It's about assaulting people. An organization violently assaulting people who came to an open service, like it's a church service. Presumably anyone can walk through the doors. It's a public service. And they could have asked them to leave if they were truly uncomfortable with it. Clearly, that's not what happened. It's and apparently he's receiving anonymous threatening phone calls urging him to drop the matter because he's, making the church look bad by saying, yeah, they punched me in the face.
Well,
have to come out.
They could have thought about that prior to punching him in the face. Like, if anyone is making the church look bad, it's the people who punched him.
Yeah. Well,
but
and
apparently that thought doesn't cross their minds, it seems.
It's just such bullshit. If something makes you look bad, the question is not whether it makes you look bad. The question is if it's true. If something you're actually doing makes you look bad, maybe there's a problem and you should re-examine it.
Yeah. But it's always everybody else's fault, isn't it?
Of course. And that's... I'm sorry. I find it so incredibly frustrating.
Yeah. It's hard to deal with, I guess. Especially since not with the homosexuality, but you also lived it to a degree.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, I can remember even being taught that homosexuality was a sin worthy of death. In fairness, everything was worthy of death, but still, I opposed it out of a kind of fear, not in the personal way that closeted people must, because I can't even imagine how horrible that would be. But there's this terror that if you do something wrong or say something wrong or support something wrong, God will judge you. And honestly, there's a pretty good example of this in the Bible. It just occurred to me, I would have looked it up, but there was an occasion where I guess a group of Israelites, this was supposed to be during when Moses was leading them back to the promised land, like near the end of the 40 years or something. And men, I think, I could be wrong on that, but the important thing is that some of the men had taken foreign wives. And the leaders were like, you can't do that. Those are foreign, godless, heathen, adult idolatrous woman. And one man opposed this. And it says he went into the tent with his wife in the sight of all the people. Well, basically, he and his wife went into their tent to have sex because she's his wife. And also in the tent. So the people saw them walking into a tent. That's it. And this young man was so full of the zeal of the Lord, and that is what it was called, that he took a spear and he attacked them and drove the spear through them both into the ground and killed them.
Wow.
And that's not the disturbing part. The disturbing point is not that two people were gutted and murdered mid-coitus. After all, it might not have actually happened. The disturbing part was the response of God. God said to the prophets, "This man was zealous for the honor of my name. He was angry at this evil and he acted." God blessed that man.
Well, yeah, that is some message to get out there and to preach to your flock.
And this is just a direct story from the Bible. And that is the reaction of God in the story in the Bible. I will look up the verses for that and put it in the description down below. I apologize. It just came to me now. I didn't look up the context. But lots of people want to say that Christianity isn't really bad. It's just misinterpreted, that the Bible isn't really bad. People just pick out the bad bits. If that were the only terrible thing in the Bible, it would be enough. And it's nowhere near.
Yeah.
That is vile. Absolutely, incredibly evil. And that murdering a man and his wife in the privacy of their own home for the zeal of the Lord would be blessed by God I don't have the words. I need to start looking up words in several languages, and I still don't think it would describe that kind of evil.
I think that would be a good note to end the conversation on.
I think you're right. Yeah, I agree. I think there's only so much of this topic we can face. Thank you again to Celtic Tiger for his keeping me abreast of these developments. I'm sorry we didn't get to all your articles, but in fairness, there's a lot of horrible shit going on. I hope that everyone can keep in mind that this is the severity of things that we're dealing with. That it is a dark time, that these are the directions that things are going. And that as much as we like to laugh at crazy Christian tweets, it isn't funny. And we need to stop it.
And this is what we are also up against.
Absolutely. Thank you all for listening. Take care of each other. And reason bless.